Then in verse 18 it says, and to whom did he swear that they would not enter his rest, but to those who were disobedient? See, God desired to give Israel more than a place to live. He wanted to give them a place to rest. And there is a big difference. I'll even tell you the reason I think that it's not the promised land, and we'll get to a couple things as we go through this, but Moses didn't go into the land, but he entered his rest. Right, Moses entered his rest. Moses was there at the Mount of Transfiguration. Moses was there in God's presence. God's the one who laid Moses down and buried him. It was God who did all those things. Moses found his place of rest, but he never went into the promised land. Don't make this about a land, or else we'll be living for promises we can touch and grab and feel, instead of the promises that are eternal and the things that actually matter to God's heart, even if they don't yet matter to our heart. Right, and as you read the story, what do we see in Israel? They just wanted to get to the land. They just wanted, and then they just wanted a king, and then they just wanted to be like other nations, and then they kept wanting things that weren't what God had for them. And so they didn't value what God had because they overvalued things that God could have done in a moment. He could have given them land anytime he wanted, but he was trying to give them rest, because what good is a land if you're still all living in turmoil and fear and confusion and idolatry? What good is a king if you still won't submit your hearts to your God? And a lot of us are living for things that don't matter because we haven't entered into our rest. We are still fighting against this idea of rest. The Hebrew word that's translated rest in Psalm 95:11 is menocha. It means consolation, specifically in marriage. Now listen to this. Consolation means the comfort received by a person after a loss or disappointment. After 430 years of slavery, God was leading Israel to comfort after disappointment. God was leading Israel not to a place to live, but to a place of being comforted and embraced and loved and healed. But they stayed focused on a land. In Exodus chapter 19, verse 4, God was clear when he said, you yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. He doesn't say, I brought you to Mount Sinai. He doesn't say, I brought you to the desert. He doesn't say, I brought you to the road to the promised land. He says, I brought you to myself. He was teaching them even then that he was their God and they were his people, that they were the sheep of his pasture, the apple of his eye, the desire of his heart. He was teaching them that he would protect them and provide for them, live among them, and most of all, that he had and would always love them.